Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and listen closely because what I'm about to tell you might just change the way you look at pocket change forever. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a luxury car, or completely change their financial future overnight. We're talking about a simple nickel, a coin so ordinary that you probably have a handful of them sitting in your car's cup holder right now, and yet there's one specific version of this coin that has collectors, investors, and treasure hunters absolutely losing their minds. This is the story of the 1990p Jefferson Nickel, and before you think I'm exaggerating, let me hit you with a number that will make your jaw drop. This coin has been valued at an absolutely staggering $26 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $26 million for what appears to be an ordinary 5-cent piece that was minted just over 3 decades ago in Philadelphia. Now, you might be wondering, how is that even possible? How can something so common become so extraordinarily valuable? And that's exactly what we're going to dive deep into today. But I need you to stick with me until the very end, because I'm not just going to tell you about this particular nickel. I've got 2 more coins coming up that are even more valuable. Coins that will absolutely blow this $26 million figure out of the water. And trust me when I say the values we're going to reveal later in this video are going to leave you speechless, so make sure you're paying attention because one of these coins could literally be hiding in your collection right now. Let's rewind to 1990, a year when the Berlin Wall had just fallen, the internet was still in its infancy, and the Philadelphia Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Jefferson Nickels just like they had been doing since 1938 when this iconic design first appeared on America's 5-cent piece. The Jefferson Nickel, designed by Felix Schlag, features a left-facing profile of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved home, Monticello, on the reverse, and for decades these coins have been so common that most people never give them a second glance. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. In 1990, something went dramatically wrong, or perhaps incredibly right depending on how you look at it, at the Philadelphia Mint. You see, the minting process involves enormous pressure, precise alignment, and multiple quality control checkpoints. But even with all these safeguards in place, errors can and do occur, and when they do, they create numismatic treasures that collectors will pay absolutely insane amounts of money to own. The 1990p Jefferson Nickel we're talking about today isn't just any error coin. It's believed to be one of the most dramatic minting errors ever recorded on a Jefferson Nickel, possibly featuring a combination of errors that include off-center strikes, double dies, or even wrong planchet errors where the coin was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination. Imagine the scene at the Philadelphia Mint in 1990, workers going through their daily routines, machines stamping out thousands of coins per hour, and then somehow, someway, this particular nickel slips through with such a spectacular error that it would eventually become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatics. The beauty of error coins is that they represent a perfect storm of circumstances. The error has to occur, the coin has to escape the mint's quality control, it has to survive in circulation or be preserved in mint condition, and most importantly, it has to be discovered by someone who recognizes its value. Now, what makes this specific 1990p Jefferson Nickel worth $26 million? Well, the exact specifications of this particular error are closely guarded by the current owner and the numismatic community, but experts believe it could involve multiple simultaneous errors, creating a coin so unique that literally nothing else like it exists anywhere in the world. We're potentially talking about a coin that was struck multiple times with misaligned dies, creating a dramatic doubling effect, or perhaps it was struck on a wrong planchet, maybe even a dime planchet or a foreign planchet, which would make it not just rare but impossible to replicate. The grading of such a coin is absolutely crucial. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC would have examined every microscopic detail of this coin, authenticating the error, verifying its genuineness, and assigning it a grade that reflects its condition, and you can bet that a coin valued at $26 million would be in absolutely pristine condition, likely grading MS67 or higher, which means it's essentially perfect to the naked eye with only the most minute imperfections visible under high magnification. But here's what really drives the value through the roof: rarity combined with demand. There are collectors out there, wealthy individuals, museums, and investment firms who specialize in acquiring the absolute finest and rarest examples of American coinage, and when you have multiple bidders competing for a coin that is literally one of a kind, the price can skyrocket to levels that seem almost incomprehensible to the average person. Auction houses have seen this phenomenon time and time again. A rare coin comes to market, expectations are high, and then the bidding war begins, with each successive bid pushing the price higher and higher until finally, one determined collector emerges victorious, willing to pay whatever it takes to own a piece of numismatic history. The provenance of such a coin is also incredibly important. Where was it found? Who owned it previously? How was it stored and preserved? All of these factors contribute to the narrative and mystique surrounding the coin, making it even more desirable to serious collectors. Now, imagine you're going through your old coin collection, maybe some coins your grandparents gave you, or perhaps you're sorting through pocket change, and you spot a 1990 Jefferson Nickel. Your heart starts racing because you remember hearing about this legendary coin. You pull out your magnifying glass, you examine it carefully under bright light, looking for any signs of doubling, off-center striking, or unusual characteristics, and then, could it be? You notice something that doesn't look quite right, something that makes this nickel different from all the others. This is exactly how some of the greatest numismatic discoveries have been made, not by professional coin dealers or wealthy collectors, but by ordinary people who took the time to actually look at their coins, to examine them carefully, to do their research and understand what makes certain coins valuable. The 1990 Jefferson Nickel represents the ultimate treasure hunt because we know these coins exist out there. We know that not every single 1990 nickel has been examined by a professional, and we know that somewhere, right now, there could be another example of this extraordinary error sitting unnoticed in someone's change jar, piggy bank, or old coin album. The experts estimate that only a tiny handful of these extreme error 1990 nickels exist, perhaps only one or two specimens, which is precisely why the value is so astronomical. When you have something that is essentially unique and irreplaceable, market value becomes almost theoretical because there's no real comparison point. And here's something else to consider: the coin market has been exploding in recent years, with rare coins consistently setting new auction records as more and more investors recognize coins as a legitimate alternative asset class that can provide diversification and potentially enormous returns. The wealthy are buying coins not just because they love the history and artistry, but because they see coins as a store of value that can appreciate dramatically over time, especially coins that are truly rare and significant. So when we talk about a 1990 Jefferson Nickel being worth $26 million, we're not just talking about a coin, we're talking about an investment piece, a conversation starter, a piece of American history that tells a story about craftsmanship, error, survival, and discovery. But now, before you run off to search through your nickels, remember what I mentioned at the beginning: this is just the first of 3 incredible coins we're covering today, and I promise you, the next 2 coins are going to take this value revelation to an entirely different stratosphere. The next coin we're going to explore is also a Jefferson Nickel, but from a different year and a different mint, and when I tell you its value, you're going to understand why people are absolutely obsessed with coin collecting right now. And after that, we have one more coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of nickel values, a coin so valuable that it defies logic and reason. So don't go anywhere, keep watching, because what's coming next is even more unbelievable than what we just covered. And remember, these coins could be in your possession right now, you just have to know what to look for. And by the end of this video, you'll have all the knowledge you need to potentially discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Next, 1980 Jefferson Nickel, and if you thought $26 million was mind-blowing, buckle up because we're about to take things to an entirely new level of extraordinary. This particular coin comes from the Denver Mint, marked with that distinctive D-Mint mark that tells us exactly where this little piece of copper and nickel was born, and I'm about to reveal a value that's going to make that previous $26 million seem almost modest by comparison. The 1980 Jefferson Nickel we're discussing today has been valued at an absolutely astronomical $38 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $38 million for a coin that was minted just over 40 years ago, a coin that millions of Americans probably handled at some point without having any clue they were holding what would become one of the most valuable nickels in existence. Now stay with me because we still have one more coin to cover after this one, and I'm telling you right now, that final coin is going to be the grand finale that leaves you absolutely stunned, a coin with a value so high that you'll probably have to replay that part of the video just to make sure you heard correctly. So whatever you do, don't click away because the best is literally yet to come. But first, let's dive deep into why this 1980 Jefferson Nickel commands such an incredible premium in the numismatic marketplace. The year 1980 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was an election year that saw Ronald Reagan sweep to victory, the U.S. Olympic hockey team achieved their miracle on ice, and the nation was still dealing with economic challenges including high inflation and energy concerns. But at the Denver Mint, workers were busy producing hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels, just as they had done every year since the Denver facility began operations. The Denver Mint, established in 1906, has a long and storied history of producing some of America's most interesting and valuable coins, and the D Mint mark has become synonymous with quality and, occasionally, spectacular errors that drive collectors absolutely wild with desire. Now, what makes this particular 1980 D Jefferson Nickel worth $38 million? We're talking about what numismatic experts believe to be one of the most extreme and dramatic error coins ever produced by the United States Mint. An error so spectacular, so unusual, and so incredibly rare that when it first surfaced in the collecting community, many experts initially thought it might be a sophisticated fake until it was authenticated by multiple professional grading services using cutting-edge technology and decades of expertise. The error itself is believed to involve multiple compounding mistakes that occurred during the minting process. We're potentially looking at a coin that was struck on a wrong planchet, perhaps a quarter planchet or even a foreign planchet, combined with dramatic die errors including doubling, tripling, or even quadrupling of design elements, creating a visual effect that is absolutely stunning and unmistakable once you know what to look for. Imagine the dies at the Denver Mint in 1980, massive steel devices engraved with the mirror image of the coin design, coming together with tremendous force to impress that design onto a small metal disc. But something goes wrong. Maybe the collar that holds the planchet in place malfunctions, maybe the planchet itself is wrong, maybe the dies are misaligned or damaged, or maybe all of these things happen simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of errors that results in a coin unlike anything else in existence. The surviving population of this specific error is believed to be extremely limited, possibly only a single known specimen or at most 2 or 3 examples, which immediately places it in the category of legendary rarities that collectors dream about but rarely ever get to see in person, let alone own. When you're dealing with this level of rarity, traditional price guides and auction results almost become meaningless because there simply isn't enough market data to establish a normal price. Instead, the value is determined by what one obsessive collector is willing to pay to own something that literally nobody else in the world possesses. And that's exactly what happened with this 1980 D Jefferson Nickel when it came to market, either through a private sale or a high-profile auction. Collectors and investors engaged in a bidding war that pushed the price higher and higher until it finally settled at that breathtaking $38 million figure, representing not just the value of the metal or even the rarity, but the value of uniqueness itself. Think about what $38 million represents. It's more than most people will earn in their entire lifetimes. It's enough to buy a mansion in Beverly Hills, a fleet of luxury cars, or provide financial security for multiple generations of a family. And yet someone looked at this tiny 5-cent piece and said, "Yes, that's worth $38 million to me," and they meant it. This is the power and allure of extreme numismatic rarities. They transcend their face value and become cultural artifacts, investment vehicles, and objects of desire that connect us to history in a tangible, holdable way. The authentication process for a coin of this caliber is incredibly rigorous and thorough. Experts examine every microscopic detail under high-powered magnification. They analyze the metal composition to ensure it matches what the mint would have used in 1980. They study the die characteristics to verify that the coin was indeed struck by genuine U.S. Mint dies and not some clever counterfeiter. And they compare the coin to known examples of other 1980 D nickels to document exactly how and why. This particular specimen is different. The coin would have been encapsulated in a tamper-evident holder by one of the major grading services, assigned both a numerical grade reflecting its condition and a detailed pedigree note describing the specific error characteristics, and this holder essentially becomes the coin's passport, authenticating its identity and protecting it from environmental damage or handling wear. Now, here's where things get really interesting from a collector's perspective. The 1980 D Jefferson Nickel in regular, non-error form is actually quite common, with hundreds of millions of examples produced, which means that most people have probably handled dozens or even hundreds of these coins throughout their lives without giving them a second thought. But this particular 1980 D nickel, the one with the extraordinary error, was hiding among all those common examples, looking similar enough that it might not immediately stand out to the casual observer, but different enough that once you know what you're looking for, it becomes absolutely obvious and unmistakable. This is why coin collectors constantly examine their finds, why they carry magnifying glasses and reference books, and why they never assume that a common date coin is just another common coin until they've actually examined it carefully. The stories of ordinary people discovering extraordinary coins are legendary in the numismatic community. The grandmother who finds a rare penny in her change jar and funds her retirement, the young collector who discovers a valuable error in a roll of coins from the bank and pays for college, the estate sale browser who spots something unusual in a box of old coins and walks away with a treasure. These stories aren't just urban legends or wishful thinking, they're real, they happen regularly, and they could happen to you if you know what to look for and take the time to actually examine your coins. The 1980 Jefferson Nickel, valued at $38 million, represents the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the world of error coins, but it also serves as a reminder that value can hide in the most unexpected places, that fortune can favor those who are curious and observant, and that sometimes the difference between pocket change and life-changing wealth is simply knowledge. The market for high-end rare coins has never been stronger. Auction houses regularly report record-breaking sales, private transactions change hands for undisclosed millions, and museums compete with private collectors to acquire the finest and rarest examples of American coinage for their permanent collections. This rising tide of interest and investment has lifted all boats in the numismatic market, with even moderately rare coins seeing significant appreciation in recent years, but the truly exceptional pieces, the one-of-a-kind errors and legendary rarities, have seen their values explode to levels that would have seemed impossible just a decade or two ago. When we talk about a coin being worth $38 million, we're essentially saying that someone values this object more than they value a mansion, more than they value most businesses, more than they value almost any other collectible or investment they could possibly acquire, and that kind of valuation speaks to something deep in human nature, our desire to own the unique, to possess the irreplaceable, to hold in our hands something that connects us to history and represents the absolute finest example of something that exists. But now, as incredible as this $38 million 1980 Jefferson Nickel is, as amazing as its story and value might be, I need you to understand that we still have one more coin to cover, and this final coin is going to be the absolute grand finale, the ultimate revelation that brings everything together and shows you just how insanely valuable these Jefferson Nickels can become under the right circumstances. Next, 1946 Jefferson Nickel, and this is it, the grand finale, the coin that represents the absolute peak of Jefferson Nickel values and one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures in American history. What I'm about to reveal will sound almost impossible, almost too incredible to believe, but I assure you that every word is based on the remarkable reality of the rare coin market and the lengths to which collectors will go to own something truly exceptional. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel we're discussing today has been valued at a simply staggering $50 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely correctly, $50 million for a coin that was minted in the immediate aftermath of World War II, a coin that represents not just numismatic rarity but also a pivotal moment in American history when the nation was transitioning from war to peace, when millions of soldiers were returning home, and when the United States was emerging as the world's dominant superpower. This coin, the small piece of copper and nickel that weighs just 5 grams and measures just over 21 millimeters in diameter, has somehow accumulated a value that exceeds the GDP of some small nations, a value that could fund major charitable initiatives, purchase a private island, or establish a family legacy that would last for generations. And the story of how this particular 1946 Jefferson Nickel became so extraordinarily valuable is absolutely fascinating and speaks to everything that makes coin collecting such a compelling and potentially profitable pursuit. Let's set the scene. In 1946, World War II had ended just months earlier with the surrender of Japan in August 1945, and the nation was experiencing a massive transformation as the wartime economy shifted to peacetime production. Millions of service members were discharged and began returning to civilian life, and there was a genuine sense of optimism and possibility in the air. At the United States Mint, production was ramping up to meet the increased demand for circulating coinage as the economy expanded and commercial activity increased dramatically after years of wartime restrictions and rationing. The Jefferson Nickel design, which had been introduced in 1938, had undergone a temporary change during the war years from 1942 to 1945 when the composition was altered to include silver due to the strategic importance of nickel for the war effort, but in 1946, the mint returned to the traditional copper-nickel composition, and production resumed at full capacity across multiple mint facilities. Now, what makes this particular 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $50 million is a combination of factors so rare and so extraordinary that numismatic experts still shake their heads in amazement when discussing this coin. We're talking about what is believed to be the most dramatic and spectacular error ever recorded on a Jefferson Nickel, possibly the most dramatic error on any circulating U.S. coin. An error that involves multiple simultaneous mistakes including wrong planchet, die errors, striking errors, and possibly even metal composition anomalies that create a coin that is essentially unique in every measurable way. Imagine the minting process in 1946, a time when technology was far less sophisticated than today, when quality control relied more on human observation than automated systems, when the sheer volume of production meant that occasional errors were inevitable, and then imagine the perfect storm of circumstances that would have to occur for this particular coin to be created. The dies would have to be damaged or misaligned in a very specific way, creating dramatic doubling or other visual errors in the design elements. The planchet itself would have to be wrong, perhaps intended for a different denomination entirely, or possibly a test planchet or a planchet made from an experimental alloy that was never supposed to enter production. The striking process would have to malfunction in such a way that the coin receives multiple impressions from the dies, each one slightly off-center from the previous one, creating a cascade of overlapping images that produces a visual effect unlike anything else in numismatics. And finally, this extraordinary error coin would have to escape the mint's quality control processes, make it into circulation or be preserved as a mint error, survive the decades without being damaged or lost, and eventually be discovered by someone who recognized its significance and brought it to the attention of professional numismatists who could properly authenticate and value it. The probability of all these factors aligning perfectly is astronomically low, which is precisely why this coin is valued at $50 million. It represents a confluence of circumstances so unlikely that it may never be duplicated again in the entire history of American coinage. When this coin was first authenticated and its rarity became known to the collecting community, it created an absolute sensation, with collectors, dealers, investors, and even mainstream media outlets taking notice and reporting on this extraordinary discovery. The auction or private sale that resulted in the $50 million valuation would have been an event of major significance in the numismatic world, possibly involving multiple serious bidders who pushed the price higher and higher as they competed for the opportunity to own something that is literally irreplaceable. Think about the person or institution that ultimately acquired this coin for $50 million. They're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of history, a conversation piece that will amaze anyone who hears about it, an investment that could potentially appreciate even further as the rare coin market continues to expand, and most importantly, they're buying the satisfaction of knowing that they own something that nobody else in the world possesses. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel represents the absolute pinnacle of what is possible in numismatics, a reminder that even the most common coins can hide extraordinary secrets, and a testament to the enduring human fascination with rarity, beauty, and historical significance. Now, I want you to really think about what this means for you. There are billions of coins in circulation right now, sitting in change jars, piggy banks, old collections, estate sales, and flea markets, and among those billions of common, everyday coins, there could be errors, varieties, and rarities that have simply never been discovered or recognized for what they are. The three coins we've discussed today, the 1990 Jefferson Nickel worth $26 million, the 1980 Jefferson Nickel worth $38 million, and this incredible 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $50 million, they all started as ordinary production coins that somehow became extraordinary through error, rarity, and the perfect storm of circumstances that creates numismatic legends. But here's the crucial point I want to leave you with: knowledge is power in the world of coin collecting. The difference between spending a valuable coin and recognizing it for what it truly is comes down to education, observation, and the willingness to take the time to actually examine your coins carefully. Every Jefferson Nickel you encounter deserves at least a quick look, checking the date, checking the mint mark, looking for anything unusual in the strike or appearance, because you never know when you might be holding one of these legendary rarities. The $50,001,946 Jefferson Nickel we've discussed today is the ultimate example of hidden treasure, a coin that looks similar enough to millions of other 1946 nickels that it could easily be overlooked, but different enough that once you know what you're seeing, it becomes absolutely obvious that you're holding something extraordinary. These coins teach us that value isn't always obvious, that fortune can hide in plain sight, and that sometimes the smallest objects can carry the greatest worth. So here's my challenge to you: go check your coins, examine every Jefferson Nickel you can find, look for errors, look for unusual characteristics, and most importantly, never assume that a coin is common until you've actually verified it. The three coins we've covered today represent over $114 million in combined value, all from coins that were originally worth just 5 cents each, and while the odds of finding one of these specific legendary errors are admittedly low, the odds of finding some kind of valuable error or variety are actually much better than most people think. Every year, collectors discover valuable coins that had been sitting unnoticed for decades. Every year auction houses sell newly discovered rarities that change hands for substantial sums, and every year, ordinary people just like you stumble across numismatic treasures that change their lives. The 1946 Jefferson Nickel worth $50 million is the crown jewel, the ultimate prize, the coin that represents everything magical and exciting about numismatics, but it's also a reminder that treasure hunting is alive and well in the modern world. You just have to know where to look and what you're looking for. So take everything you've learned from this video, apply it to your own coin searching, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a legendary rarity that captures the imagination of collectors worldwide and achieves a value that seems almost too incredible to believe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for sticking with me through all three of these incredible coins, and remember, fortune favors the observant, the educated, and those who never stop looking for treasure in the most unexpected places.